Hi, this is Lisa from Speak Inc. based in Tucson, Arizona, and today I'm here with Mr. Shep Hyken, customer service and experience expert. How are you doing today, Shep?
Man, any better? I don't know what I would do with myself. It's great to see you and your personal assistant.
Yeah, this is Maggie May. She helps me out here in the office, keeps me on track.
How many
So,
words a minute can she type?
she's not very. She does dictation.
Perfect.
She's gotten better with that. Anyway, I wanted to connect up with you, Shep, for the simple reason we had a client. Originally, we started in South Korea. That got canceled. We understood that. Then we rescheduled for another event, and that unfortunately has been canceled, and now we're looking at 2021. But what you had done is come up with a creative idea when the 2020 event was canceled here in the States as the substitute for South Korea. And that was to record a video for the client to play on the original play date,
Yep.
South Korea. And I thought that was something that was very creative. So the reason I asked you to join us today was, what other things are you doing now that virtual is the new world for so many of us? What are some of the creative things that you're doing to help promote virtual events for clients?
Sure. It's great. First of all, everything that could ever be done on stage can be done virtually. What we're finding is we simply have to pivot to, instead of a live presentation from on stage, we do a live presentation from either the office here. I have a studio on the other side of that wall where I can actually stand and deliver a presentation with graphics. We can pre-produce it. In other words, it's actually recorded to be released live. I might still attend the live virtual event. We play the recording, and I'm there just as I would be afterward to answer questions. We can, again, as I mentioned, do it live, do it pre-recorded. You can do, and I hate to use the word webinar because it's a very boring word. By the third syllable, I'm starting to fall asleep. But we can do a webinar type experience. I call it the virtual interaction that includes slides, back and forth Q&A. I love it when it's an interview format like you and I are talking. There's my favorite new thing, which actually is something we did over the years, where I would host a dinner or a lunch, and then I would be their speaker, and then I would answer questions. Why not do it virtually? And I call these Eat and Speaks, where we do a short lunch or a short dinner. Everybody receives their food at the same time. I like to keep it intimate. When I say hosting a dinner, these dinners are probably 10, 12 people. So we have a client that has their top executives, or they maybe ask for their best customers. And we do this virtual interaction where we eat together. I introduce everybody during that time. Then I speak for a few minutes, answer a few questions, but then I lob questions out to the audience. And we go around the virtual table, if you will, and everybody gets to answer a question. And we learn from each other, not just from me. And people say it's the most powerful event. The beautiful thing is the client doesn't really have to sell during that time. Many times they'll ask me to sign books for each person in the audience. And then the sales rep that's assigned to that client will visit the client a week or two later and say, hey, we had Shep sign a book for you. That's when the selling's done. But that's a great example of taking something that was originally in person at a restaurant and moving it virtually. Again, everything that could be done on a stage or in person can now be done just like this, virtually.
Interesting. So when you do those Q&A type things, do you incorporate polling? I find polling on some of the events I've been sitting in on to be extremely interactive, and the results sometimes are mind-boggling.
Yeah, so you can do polling, you can ask questions. Of course, there's the chat. There's different ways. If you can see everybody in a gallery view, you can ask everybody who's paying attention or agrees with this, raise your hand, and you see a bunch of images on the screen. Yeah, it's like everybody's hand goes up and they can visually see what's going on. So there's many different ways to create interaction between. By the way, one of the things I enjoy is having my speech interrupted by the host. Now, sometimes we plan for those interruptions, but often I just say, when you think you have a question, just jump in and stop me. And it's easier to do that in this format than it is if I'm speaking in front of 2,000 people on a very well-produced stage.
Now, one of the other things that you mentioned in one of our conversations was that you do interviews, whether it be possibly speakers that were previously at an event, so that there can be a recap with that speaker, or say the C-suite or other speakers that might be part of the webinar. Have you had great success with that? And
Yeah, it's a fireside chat, essentially. So imagine that if I was doing a speech and afterward, the CEO of the company comes up, we sit down and we talk. Well, we can do that pre-recorded. We can do it a week after the event. We can field questions over a period of time from the audience and come back and do that. If the client would like, I can actually interview some of the other speakers or executives as part of this. The beautiful thing about virtual is almost all of the meetings, even if it's a live event, they're recorded, because many times the playback, the number of people that are coming back to watch the recording is far greater than the people that could actually attend. The other nice thing is you can chunk it up. You don't have to, you can create the big event, but then you can chunk up and release pieces of that event over the next several months, even up to a year.
Yeah. Now, do you have, I have several clients, and of course since they say they were doing a 6-day event, now they're down to 4 days. Do you do a lot of multiple day events, like a snippet on the first day, second day, third day, fourth, to create some
Continuity.
Continuity.
There's the word, continuity.
That's the word I was looking for. Some continuity that can go across the entire virtual experience over days.
Why not? And it's also because if you're going to pre-record your segments, which I think you can do a mixture of, if you wanted to go straight live with everything, that's great. Your speakers are going to have to be there day after day after day. But let's say you say to the speaker, hey, give me 4 7-minute presentations. Take 4 points, break it into small chunks. Let's drop them over the 4 days. That's a very effective way of doing it. Now, as an MC or a host, which I've done in live events, and I'm starting to do and do those and get requests for that, is at that point, yes, I have to be there for the entire event. I have to listen to the speakers, listen to those videos if they're pre-recorded, make comments as we come out of it, get ready to introduce the next speaker, perhaps do a short little interview. So that's also a combination. Here's what's happened. This pandemic has forced us to pivot. It's forced us to make changes that I believe that maybe 5, 7 years from now, we would be there, but it's forced us to go virtual and remote, if you will. We are learning to use tools that have already been there. In other words, we are now adopting what has already been there, and we're adapting to using them. I believe that we're going to go back to where we were before with major meetings, but there's going to be lots of opportunity for speakers and clients to do more of these types of events, smaller scale, maybe a targeted audience, very targeted content. So I believe this is going to create opportunity for both sides that we've never even thought of before.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's going to a hybrid situation, and or a lot of little events like this to help build up to the big event, and or as a follow-on. So I really agree with you. Anything else that you would like to add, Shep, as far as value or creative ideas that you've been able to do?
Well, I think that's how you have to look at every speaker that you bring on has to bring some value. But if all they want is the content, you can send people a book. But when we can take a virtual presentation, we can interject some personality, some energy, some visuals. And by the way, you and I are just talking, but imagine if we were incorporating slides. I'm working where I now have a monitor over my shoulder. Instead of running the slides off of a shared screen, you can watch them right over my shoulder, which is a completely different experience. We're doing all types of different presentations in different modes. And I think the variety is the spice of meetings of the future.
And we're never too old to learn something new.
Right.
Hey, listen, this has been absolutely fabulous. I appreciate your time, your insights, and hope we'll be working together. I know we will be.
Sure we will. Guaranteed. I want to work with you and Maggie May.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be again sooner than later. So you take care of yourself. And again, I appreciate your time, Shep.
All right. Thanks. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.